So the second part of the inner ear is the balance. This is the cross section of the inner ear. So you can see this area, we already talked about it, and this is the cochlea. This is the tip of the cochlea, so helicotrema, and these are the different ducts inside the cochlea. So you can, starting from here, this is the stapes and this is the oval window, and this goes like this, and that is the vestibular duct, and goes all the way to the tip and comes back like that, and this is the tympanic duct and ends with the round window. So see, you can see both of them are separating the middle ear from the inner ear. And this green area that you see, that is the cochlear duct, and this is where the hair cells are located. But we already talked about this, so let's forget about this area. So this is the part that is responsible for balance, and I can separate that into two different areas. One is the semicircular canals. Okay, so this area is the semicircular canals, but you can see there is two different names there. One is a canal and the other one is the duct. So the canal is actually the bony part. So these are the walls. So this is a bony, like a bony labyrinth, and the duct, you can see these green areas. These are the membranous labyrinth. So this is the one, that's why they have two different names there. So ducts are located inside canals. So and the ducts contains the endolymph, okay, and the canal contains perilymph. So there is three different semicircular canals are there. So this is the anterior one or superior one, and this is the one that is the horizontal one or transverse one, and this is the posterior one. You can see at the end there is an enlarged area, and that's called ampulla. Okay, some hair cells are located. So this is light green, these are the hair cells. So hair cells are located inside ampulla. Ampulla is connected to this whole area that's called vestibule. Vestibule has two different areas. One is called utricle. Utricle is close to the semicircular canals. Okay, so these ampullae that you see, ampullae is the plural form of ampulla. So these are connected to the utricle, and there is another one that's called saccule, and saccule is closer to the cochlea. These utricle and saccule, these two parts of the vestibule are connected to each other, and that is the utricosaccular duct. These two ducts combine, and that makes the endolymphatic duct. And this thing that you see, this enlargement, this is the endolymphatic sac, and then this will drain in the subarachnoid space. So let's talk about the semicircular canals, which is important for movement of the head in different rotation, different areas. You can see again that there is different semicircular canals. Inside should be the ducts, not shown here properly, and then these are enlarged areas, and these are the ampullae. This area that's enlarged. Inside this ampullae, you can see something else. This is called the crista ampullaris. Okay, so this is the crista ampullaris. This area is, this is called crista ampullaris, which is around here. This area. So these are made of the simple columnar epithelial tissue, and then these are the supporting cells, and you can see these hair cells here. This thing that you see, this is called cupula, and this is made of gelatinous protein, and it's floating in this fluid, and that is the endolymph fluid that is inside the semicircular ducts here. Okay, somewhere here. So this is the fluid there, and you can see that there's microvilli or stereocilia that you see here that is embedded in the cupula. Then the hair cells are connected to the nerve, and then any time there is a change here, then the nerve senses it and then sends it to the brainstem. So this is a you know, if somebody moves his head in different directions, three different planes of directions, and here is an example of that. So if somebody is moving, I said, from right to left, then you have changes that you can see in the semicircular canals here. So you have it, the semicircular canals on the left side, and you have this on the right side. So when you see it here, um, when you move your head, the fluid in the semicircular canals moves in the opposite direction. So that moves in the opposite direction. So move your head, and that will cause an opposite direction here. So when it depends on these hair cells that you can see here. So when the fluid comes there, then this stereocilia move toward the kinocilium, and you can see that these tip links proteins are there. That opening, you know, that potassium channels there, and that will cause a depolarization. So if you are moving your head from right to left, and that will cause you know, movement of the fluid to the opposite direction, and that will cause a depolarization. What happens to the other side? So you move still, your head is still moving to the left, but the fluid is moving to the right side. So this is an opposite side, and now the stereocilium is the kinocilium actually in this case moves toward the stereocilia, and there's no opening of the potassium channels because there's no opening there. So potassium does not enter the cell, and there's nothing happens here. So there's no depolarization. So that will hyperpolarize, which means that there is not much information is processed. There is no action potential there, so nothing will happen there. And that way you feel that movement on an area that caused depolarization. The vestibule also have, so this is the vestibule, so the utricle and saccule, as I talked about it before, they also have hair cells, and these are called macula. So the macula is located in the utricle and saccule. So these hair cells are there, and it has a stereocilia, but it has something else. So this is a membrane. Okay, it's a gelatinous membrane. This is called gelatinous membrane. And there is also have calcium carbonate on top of that, and that calcium carbonate is called otolith. So like small stones of the ear. So if you translate it, otolith, and they are embedded on top of this gelatinous membrane, and depends on the movement of the head, then you know, the effect of gravity, it will move these calcium carbonates, and this is how these hair cells are activated, and then it will cause activation of the nerve fibers, and then you can feel the different direction. So for saccule is important for movement of the head up and you know, going to a vertical plane, up and down, for example going in an elevator, or moving the head anterior to posterior. And utricle is moving the head left to right, or in a lateral displacement from left to right, sideways, going left to right. So both of them are important for linear acceleration. For the comparing this with the semicircular canals and ducts, that was for rotational movements, and this is for linear acceleration and deceleration. For the vestibular pathways, there are three different reflexes are there. One is called the vestibular ocular reflex. This is important that when you move your head, also the eyes are moving, so that way the object can stay on top of your retina and the fovea, and we talked about this in before chapter 9. So that movement is for that, so you can see things clearly. The second one is called vestibular cervical, and this is connecting the nerve fibers to the cervical area and the muscles that are supplying the neck area, and it's important for adjustment of the head and neck movements. And vestibular spinal reflex, that is going to the torso muscles and also the proximal girdle muscle, girdle, Girdle, shoulder and hip and girdle muscles, and that's also for posture and also for tone of those muscles. So you have these vestibular nuclei. There is two of them. One is the medial one and the other one is the lateral one. The medial one is important as processing information for the rotational acceleration, that's getting information from semicircular canals. Some of them are going to the muscles in the neck area, and some other ones are going all the way down and then the torso and in the girdle area. So the pathway for that is the medial vestibulospinal tract, also the MLF. So there is an ascending MLF and also descending MLF. This is the descending one. If you go back to the brainstem, you can see the MLF in that brainstem section also. And the lateral vestibular nuclei, these are for the linear acceleration. So this is getting information from the vestibules, from utricle and saccules, and that information is going to the limbs. So these are for extensors of the limb. So they're going in a different area, and the pathway for that is called the lateral vestibulospinal tract. If you remember from chapter 8, lateral vestibulospinal tract is on the same side, ipsilateral, does not cross it, and the medial vestibulospinal tract is bilateral on both sides. The diseases of the balance, there is 3 of them that are common, so I put it here. One is Meniere's disease, the other one is labyrinthitis, and the third one is the benign positional vertigo. It's a different, I want to tell you, it's a little bit easier way to remember all of these things. In Meniere's disease, the cause is not known. Nobody knows it. There are different risk factors. There are different, factors that may increase the possibility of getting Meniere's disease, but the actual cause is not known. Labyrinthitis, it's usually an infection. Viral infection is more common. Also, some toxins like alcohol, quinine, and salicylate like aspirin can cause labyrinthitis. And benign positional vertigo is those otolith that I talked about it before. In some people, those otolith dislodge and they go to semicircular canal. So when they move their head, this otolith moves in a different direction, and that will stimulate the hair cells in the crista ampularis. So if they don't move their head, they do not get vertigo. So that's the cause. From sign and symptom point of view, all 3 of them, they will get vertigo. Okay, all 3 of them have vertigo, and they also get nystagmus, which is the movement of the eyes. But with Meniere's disease and labyrinthitis, they also get hearing loss and nausea and vomiting, and sometimes the fullness of the ear and some pain in the ear. So how can you differentiate the Meniere's disease from labyrinthitis? If the symptoms and signs are the same, then you have to rule out labyrinthitis. You have to take a good history, so the person, you know what kind of medication they took, if they were exposed to any kind of toxins, if they have any kind of infections or not. So once you remove and rule out all those causes, then you can say, okay, the person may have Meniere's disease. Benign positional vertigo, the main symptom is the vertigo and dizziness. And that's associated with movement of the head, so that way it's a little bit easier to diagnose. And that was the last slide.